When we think about theater today, we're picturing these incredible sets, famous actors, maybe a big Broadway musical. But what if I told you that the whole grand tradition of English drama didn't start in a fancy playhouse at all, but in a church? Yeah, let's get into this, because the journey from a sacred prayer to a public performance is one of the most amazing stories in art history. So, picture this. It's the Middle Ages, and the church has a huge problem. The Bible, the single most important book in their world, is in Latin, but almost nobody can read Latin. So, how do you share these epic, world-defining stories? Creation, Noah's Ark, the life of Christ. Well, you've got to get creative. And that one creative solution sparked a revolution that would eventually give us William Shakespeare.
And the first move? It came from the church itself. They realized the raw power of performance. They decided that if people couldn't read the stories, they were going to have to see them. And that was the moment drama was really reborn in Europe.
They called it liturgical drama, and it started out pretty simply. You'd have priests and clergy acting out key scenes from the Bible right there during the church service. I mean, can you imagine going to church on Easter and seeing the story of the resurrection not just read aloud, but actually performed right in front of you? It was this incredibly visual, incredibly emotional way to teach the core ideas of the faith. And boy, did it work. Maybe a little too well. These little plays got so popular and so elaborate with costumes and props that they literally couldn't be contained inside the church anymore. The action started spilling out of the holy sanctuary and right into the town square. And just like that, it transformed from a religious lesson into a full-blown public festival. So, okay, once drama hits the public square, it needs new management, right? And that's where the local trade guilds stepped up. We're talking about the bakers, the shipbuilders, the blacksmiths, all the craftspeople of the town. For them, putting on one of these plays became a huge deal, a matter of civic pride, and, of course, a spiritual duty. This is what gave rise to the mystery plays, which are sometimes called cycle plays. And the ambition here, it was just staggering. We're not talking about one little scene anymore. No, these were massive, epic cycles of dozens of plays, all performed on these incredible pageant wagons that would roll through the city, telling the entire story of the Bible, from the very first day of creation all the way to the final day of judgment. Now, only 4 major cycles of these plays have survived to this day, from the towns of Chester, York, Wakefield, and Coventry. And hey, if you ever need to remember those for a test or just to impress your friends, here's a handy little mnemonic: CYWC. Just think, see why we care. It's a great little trick to lock in the names of these foundational works.
All right, so at the same time all this is happening, another type of play starts to take shape, the morality play. Now, these were different. Instead of telling a story from the Bible, they told a story about the struggle for an ordinary person's soul. The characters weren't historical figures. They were allegories. You'd literally have actors playing characters named good deeds or knowledge or pride, all fighting over the soul of the main character, like in the super famous play Everyman.
Okay, this brings us to a really important distinction, a key takeaway. So take a second and think about it. What was the key difference between a mystery play and a morality play? I'll give you a moment. All right, here it is. The crucial difference is what they were about. Mystery plays focused on biblical history. They told you what happened. But morality plays focused on moral instruction. They taught you how to live. One was about sacred history, the other was about your personal journey to salvation. This split really shows you the 2 big goals of early English drama. But this intense focus on religion, it couldn't last forever. There was a massive cultural earthquake on the horizon, one that would snatch drama out of the hands of the church and the guilds and put it into the hands of professional artists. And that was, of course, the Renaissance. The English Reformation was a huge catalyst here. As the singular authority of the Catholic Church was questioned, so was its monopoly on what stories were worth telling. Suddenly, playwrights started turning their gaze away from the heavens and down towards the earth. They began exploring human ambition, jealousy, tragedy, and love in a way that was completely new and totally electrifying. This timeline really gives us a perfect map of the whole journey. We started inside the church with that liturgical drama. Then we moved out into the town square for those huge cycle plays, both the mystery and morality types. From there, we see a transition with short plays called interludes, which were performed in the great halls of nobles. And that leads us, finally, to the birth of the professional playhouse and what we know as Renaissance theater. So, what made Renaissance theater so radically different? Well, for starters, it's the characters.
We moved away from simple figures who just represent one single idea, like the character Pride, to individuals with deep, complex, and often really contradictory inner lives. For the first time, characters on stage had real psychological depth. The language changed, too. This is when playwrights started mastering what we call blank verse. All that really means is it's poetry with a steady rhythm, but it doesn't rhyme. And this was a massive breakthrough. It allowed for dialogue that felt poetic and powerful, but at the same time sounded so much more natural, way closer to how people actually speak. And this is a big one. Playwrights gave us a direct window straight into the minds of their characters through soliloquies and asides. This is when a character talks to themselves or directly to us in the audience. For the first time ever, we could hear a character's private thoughts, their inner turmoil, their secret plans. It was an absolute game changer for storytelling. Now, it's easy to think the Renaissance just means Shakespeare, but he was, as the saying goes, standing on the shoulders of giants. There was this incredible group of trailblazing playwrights who really built the foundation for the golden age of English drama. And chief among them was Christopher Marlowe. This guy was an absolute master of that powerful blank verse we just talked about, and he created these unforgettable tragic heroes. Just think of his Dr. Faustus, a brilliant man who literally sells his soul to the devil for unlimited knowledge and power. Marlowe perfected the art of showing characters whose greatest strength, their incredible ambition, is the very thing that leads to their doom. So Marlowe and other writers like Thomas Kyde, they totally shifted the focus to these intensely human themes. They weren't just telling old stories anymore. They were dissecting the human condition itself, exploring the moral price of ambition, the agony of revenge. They set the stage, quite literally, for everything that was about to come. Okay, before we wrap up, let's do a quick memory check to lock in the main points. First, remember that English drama was born out of a need for religious teaching, starting right inside the church. Second, it blew up into a huge public spectacle with the outdoor mystery and morality plays run by the town guilds. And third, the Renaissance completely refocused storytelling onto secular, human-centered themes and psychologically complex characters. So we end on this thought. This whole incredible evolution from a simple, dramatized prayer to a complex human tragedy like Dr. Faustus, it all happened in just a few hundred years. It shows us that as our view of the world changes, the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of it have to change too. What this journey really reveals is the amazing power of storytelling, to adapt, to reflect our deepest questions, and ultimately to explore what it even means to be human.